like political. Like that guy over there, he's a men's rights activist, so he's very anti-feminist and that type of thing. So you get religion, you get politics, you get culture. But I think someone told me that you guys are you guys atheists? Okay, I'm a Muslim, so we can have a discussion about belief in God.
All right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay, good. You okay with that? Okay, so what was your name again?
I'm Augustine.
Augustine? Ray. My name is Suboor. Suboor, yeah.
Suboor.
So Ray Augustine. I'm gonna try and remember that. So what are your idea on God? What do you believe about God?
I feel like the general teachings of someone who's never really been, let's say, indoctrinated from a young age, the general teachings of God represent as someone who's all-loving, at least because, I grew up in a Christian household, and God is seen as a figure who's all-loving, omnipotent, all good, and it's a bit ironic with all the bad that's going on in the world. So how do you juxtapose, or how do you justify the fact that there is so much atrocity going on, despite this supposed figure who's out there?
And that's led you to a position of, you said atheism or agnosticism?
A mix of that, and also I've never really felt any need to believe. I've never felt ever lost where I needed to find something else that was not there. Which led me to God, but hasn't.
Good. And yourself, Ray?
So I don't really believe in like a material, like interventionist gods and such, but I think the concept of God, even if it's not a real divine thing, is still very important. And very useful for people to believe. So personally, I don't believe that God exists. I don't believe that Jesus, because I grew up in a Christian household, that Jesus, is really as it exactly says in the Bible. But I still think there's a lot to take from religions like Christianity, like Islam.
Okay. So, the first thing that you mentioned about God being loving, and then you see evil in the world and this type of thing. The thing is, if we just go with the idea that God is loving and then you see evil in the world, then there's a lot of questions like, why does suffering happen? Why does this happen? Why does that happen? But if we have, say, a concept of God in which life is a test, there's good things that happen, there's bad things that happen, and this life is not supposed to be a cosmic disco. Everyone's happy, everyone's jolly, and then we all, go to heaven. That you go through tests and trials, then you start, like in Islam, we believe that God created this life to be a test. So evil and good, we're tested by all the time. So everybody that you know around you, they'll have things that you don't have, and some people will not have things that you have. You will go through trials that they will not go through, and vice versa. But overall, every human being has good and bad things happening to them. Like think of who's the richest man, or who's someone that you guys look up to as a successful person.
I don't really know.
There's rich people, but they're not people I look up to.
Okay. So name a famous celebrity who you would look up to.
If you're going to go rich, I'd probably choose Bill Gates or something.
Out of all the billionaires.
Yeah, out of all the billionaires, I'd probably choose
Like
Bill Gates.
Bill Gates, Musk maybe, Elon Musk.
Musk is a bit fucked too.
Yeah,
they're all a bit fucked.
Okay. So with these guys, they right now have reached their 60s. Musk is in his 50s, but Bill Gates a lot older. And they have billions upon billions upon billions. And you would think that they have something that you don't have. But they would give up their money to have your youth. And people are investing in anti-aging stuff and how to escape death and this type of thing. So each human being has something that other human beings don't have. Also that in today's society, we're told, if you have X, Y, Z, you'll be happy, right? So for example, for youngsters, if you have a lot of money, if you have a lot of status and followers, if you have a lot of women around you, if you're famous or whatever, this will give you happiness. if you look at people that have had those things, it didn't lead to happiness. Sorry?
I don't. That you're listing things that people tell you make you happy. I'm saying maybe believing in Islam. I was told that believing in Islam you become incredibly happy. I was just adding to your list.
Okay, so I'll give you an example of someone that I like to think of, right? You guys heard of Jim Carrey? Dumb and Dumber, Liar Liar, right? So with him, what's very interesting is he was a young teenager at the time that he found fame, and then he was famous for majority of his life. He had wealth, status, followers, everything. And now that he's a much older age, he said, I wish everybody has what I have so that they know that this is not the answer, right? So people go through life following the hedonistic dream of wanting everything, but eventually they reach that and they realize it's not as good as they thought. Give you, like, I'm guessing you, say in the last year or so, you've got a new mobile phone, right? Oh, you don't? Okay. But something new that you're looking forward to having, like a car or...
Not exactly my degree, perhaps.
Okay, say a degree. You always have this euphoric idea of what it's going to feel like when you achieve something. But when you achieve it, is it as good as what you thought?
It really depends how much work you put into it.
I feel like it depends.
I feel like
I
if you
really
put work
agree with the
into
things
it,
you're saying. But I feel to some extent, at least not having to worry about money is definitely a good thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't mean you have to be ultra rich, but enough money so that you don't have to worry about something.
Yeah.
It's definitely good for you.
Everybody is believing in
Scrolling back a bit in terms of trials, you mentioned trials, that life is trials. What trials to where God tests us if we're worthy of what?
So, Augustus, right?
Yeah.
One of the things about the human condition, if you look at the people who are successful in life, people who have achieved a lot with very little, they started off with no resources and they achieved a lot, they helped a lot of people, they are not usually people that had an easy life. People that have easy lives usually are not the top achievers, they're usually the slackers. I'm sure you guys can think of some examples in your own head that if you guys had everything right now, right? You had all the income in the world, you had this, you had that, your drive to go and study and do these types of things will slowly start to diminish. So we believe these tests and trials have many different purposes. Sometimes it's to develop you and make you remember God. Because look, imagine somebody who's a billionaire, they're sitting at the side of a beach, they have, a drink, they have servants taking care of them, they have a expensive boat, they have all of these things, and they're looking out at the sea. You would think of them as very happy. But if you knew that they had cancer and they had 6 weeks to go, what happens to all of that happiness? It's a different perspective, right? So in Islam, death, disease, famine, difficulty, trials, trauma, these things, they're there to detach you from this world. Because if our lives were easy, we would forget God, we would forget why we exist.
Egotistical for a God figure who's all good to force tragedy onto people for them to start believing in God. Where is the all goodness in that if a God figure, like someone who's all good, forces upon you? Like if someone is omnipotent, why would they have to make you suffer to be happy?
So
why would you need to suffer to be able to appreciate the things that you have in life? Is there not a better solution?
So this is the thing that human beings would love. Human beings would love to have an easy life. They would love to be achieving the goal without the struggle. But the fact is, in everyday life, we already know that you have to go through a struggle to achieve something. Now, God says in the Quran that perhaps you love something but it's bad for you, and perhaps you hate something when it's good for you. So no one likes tests and trials and difficulties, but they are something which bring out the best in humanity. And something that you said earlier about the need of God, right? The utility of believing in God. So when we look at this life from a bird's eye point of view, 100 years ago, people like us, we were here in Speaker's Corner, having a discussion, talking about politics, religion, theology, whatever. Where are those people today? They're dead. They're finished. Now, the struggles and the pain and the happiness and the joy and the tears and the laughter in their life, it's all gone. So, when you look at life from a God-centric point of view, about you have a limited time upon earth, you have times of happiness, you have times of sadness, then you start to actually understand what is the perspective on life. Why do we actually exist? Because if a human being didn't go through, like for example, the lockdown, we had the lockdown, right? How happy were you when the restrictions were lifted and you could go out, you can meet your friends? Yeah, but normally, if there was no restrictions, you would just see it as normal. You'd see it as your right to just leave the house. So the difficulty made you appreciate something you took for granted.
But would the difficulty itself, would the appreciation outweigh the fact that you could have been happier during those 2 years or year of lockdown? Is that one moment where I can reunite with my friends after a year of working from home really outweigh the fact of being able to have that experience in person for the last 2 years?
Yeah, that's a good question, Augustus. The assumption there is that which one of the two scenarios leads to the maximum happiness?
You keep maximum happiness as if it's a quest for humans to reach maximum happiness, but that's kind of delusion, because
I agree.
The amount of people who never get that, as well as also innocence and the loss of innocence of people who never even have an opportunity to access happiness.
Yeah.
Say I know a Syrian refugee who drowned on the way on a crossing to Spain. Where was the fairness in that trial? Where was the happiness he was promised?
So the thing is that this life, we're not promised happiness.
So what's the point of life?
The point of life is a test. We are here to be tested with good and evil, and the purpose of life is to have a relationship with God, to worship God. Now, it is more than, like for example, in our life, we eat, we sleep, we go to work, we do these things. In Islam, you live your life as you are, but you live it in a God-centric way. So, you know, sorry?
With God in mind.
With God in mind for your actions.
Where is your free will in that? If you're doing all your actions for the point of pleasing some God, how on earth is that you being your legitimate best self if you're doing it on delusion of passing this test to access what this?
Yeah. So that's the so that's the paradigm shift with Islam. Islam makes it clear that it's not about you. It's about living a God-centric life.
So submit your will.
That's exactly what Muslim means. Submit to God.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So the thing is, in today's society, we are socialized and we grow up in this environment in which it's about do what you want, do what you please, what is right is what you feel. Islam gives you a different paradigm. You know, sometimes you see these images where it's like a vase, but it's actually two faces looking at each other as well. Sometimes you get these images and it's either it looks like a rabbit or it looks like a duck, right? So you have this thing called the gestalt shift, when you shift from one paradigm to another, right? Something looks totally different from another perspective. Islam gives you a different perspective on life. It's not about us and how we feel. It's about the submission to the Creator, and in that submission, God promises you will have peace of heart.
I do really agree with lots of the things that you're saying, and when I've spoken to Muslims before, I think the Muslim perspective is really beautiful. But then sometimes I don't quite agree to the full extent. Like, what happens to the people who say fail the test? You know, it's too much for them and they kill themselves. You know, what happened to those? Does God still extend to them? What happens, you know, after the test of this life? Do they burn in hell because they did something wrong? Do they burn in hell because they did something in a test?
So the thing is, in Islam, we do believe in heaven and hell. We do believe in justice of God. So God is loving, He's the just, He's the good. but nobody will have any injustice done on them. That's a promise from God. So on the sorry.
When it's kind of innocence come into that and loss of innocence. That if no one has injustice done to them, we all know in the world there is lots of injustice on a daily basis.
No. As in on the day of judgment, there will be no injustice.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I've got just not a debating question, but like
Sure.
a factual question. Is the day of judgment like the day that you die, or is there physically a point that we do not know in time in which God will judge this planet?
Yeah. Very good question, Ray. So the thing is, as soon as a person dies, their afterlife begins. But the day of judgment is a period of time in the future, and what we're told about it is not just through what we believe is the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, but also Jesus and other prophets that came. And there are signs towards the day of judgment. And what we're supposed to be doing is we're supposed to be living our life in the best way possible in preparation for that day. And today's society, we start to see some of the signs about the day of judgment which the Prophet spoke about. For example, the Prophet was asked about the day of judgment, when is it going to be? And he said about the barefooted Arabs, the Bedouins, these people who were, dealing with camels and sheep and these things, that they will compete with each other to build tall buildings. Now today in the Middle East, because of the boom in oil, these people who thought for thousands of years, they were just dealing with camels and herd and sheep, they are now building these tall, extravagant buildings. He also spoke about time and all these other various types of things. So we believe in this end time eschatology in prophecies, and those are signs. But the actual hour, the day of judgment, we don't know. We don't actually know. That's the first for Speaker's Corner there. But one of the things at your age, which is very important, is that a lot of people don't think about mortality, especially at your age. They don't think about death. They don't think about these things. However, even if you're a secularist, even if you're an atheist, there are huge benefits to be thinking about death, right? These people who speak about personal development and these types of things and high achievement in life and excellence, they always emphasize this, that if you live your life with the assumption of abundance of time, you actually become lethargic. So even if you're not religious, to think about death has these benefits, right? Many
You believe in an afterlife. What is the point of believing in death?
the benefits of death is that it makes you less attached to this world. So the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, the most intelligent people, the most wise of people are those who remember death and prepare for it. I'm paraphrasing here, but the point is that if, for example, you're living a life of hedonism, of following worldly desires, thinking about mortality, it gets you detached from that reality. And it makes you think about higher, bigger things.
What about, not about the teachings of Islam, what about the actual material existence of a God? So, I mean, I believe that the most stupid thing you can do is believe completely one way or the other. If somebody is to say there's zero chance that there exists a God, regardless of what the teachings actually say, if there's 100% chance that there is a God. Because in my opinion, the teachings of religions are important, even if there isn't a God, because they can say things which are important for you to know how to live your life, regardless of if you're going to be judged afterwards.
Right. I wouldn't agree with that. I would say what would be irrational is not to think about the question. Because some people, they make a decision either way without thinking about it. Right? So I do believe there is a God. And I do believe that if one is to use their reason and their logic and their natural disposition, they will arrive at that. Because sometimes God is strawmanned, right? Like we have an idea of a man in the sky with a grey beard throwing down.
Like you said,
Yeah. But we believe, we believe, and the same with Jesus and Moses and all the other prophets, that God is transcendent, nothing like a human being, nothing like a physical thing.
That's where I agree with Islam so much more than Christianity in that sense.
Well, even Christianity, you see, a lot of what we consider today as Christianity is not from Jesus, because Jesus believed what we believe, right? It came later. You had interpolations, you had Greco-Roman influences, Hellenistic thinking upon the Bible. But the prophets of old, Jesus, Moses, and the prophets, they taught transcendent creator, beyond space and time. One of the things we learn in Islam is, if you imagine what God looks like, that's not God. Like, he's beyond any comprehension.
Islam teach of like the beginning of humanity, how humanity formed,
And how does that interconnect with science? Because I don't think that science and religion are mutually exclusive at all. There are some points in which the teachings of religion and teaching of science do come into conflict.
Yeah.
Like in Christian culture, you've got some people saying Adam and Eve 6,000 years, and then you've got the science, which I think is just true. There's,
Humans go back thousands of years before.
Islam.
Yeah. There's a very complex way of doing it and a simple way of doing it. I'm going to simplify it. But for more information, I can give you some other stuff. In Islam, we believe that science is a beautiful thing. You look out at nature, you apply your reason, you try to understand the workings of the world.
Islam furthered science incredibly.
Yeah. Because we consider it a form of worship.
Even God in the Quran refers.
Yeah. Do you not think? Do you not reflect? Yeah. So we don't have a problem with science. We embrace science. But as Muslims, we believe in miracles. So for example, God created the world. He created the system of the seasons. He created reproduction. He created us to be able to see and to decipher different colors and this type of thing. However, apart from then what we call natural world, which science is there, we also believe miracles are possible. It's possible for God to right now create a child ex nihilo, from like without mother and father. Why? Because God has created the system of reproduction, but you can also create it without. So we believe that Adam and Eve are miraculous creations. Adam is a miraculous creation. Some people, they think this is unscientific, but it's not. So I'll give you an example. Jesus, he is somebody that we believe was born without a father. Now every person here has a father and a mother, right? Why is it inconceivable that God can create without a father? It's not logically incoherent. So we believe in miracles, which are exceptions, but we believe in generally science as well.
If God is able to do miracles at any point, what are the ethics behind God then testing every human out there in their mortal life? Why should to appreciate life? But I'm sure that some people, despite all the horrendous conditions they go through, they never get to a stage of enlightenment where they're able to appreciate what they have. And so kind of God's mission to some degree fails some people in appreciating the good that they have, because in a sense that, I don't know, some child who's left starving in Africa,
Can I add to that? So how can somebody, somebody who's had something's been done to them which is beyond their control, and that sets a path for the rest of their life, and they will do bad things in their life, but it was done to them as well. But do they fail the test?
Yeah, very good question. Thing is, every person is judged according to the knowledge they have and the circumstances they're in. So if you're somebody who's brought up in, say, a certain part of South London, you live on an estate, there's gangs, there's drugs, there's all these issues, and there's somebody else who grows up in a suburban area, country life, they will have two different sets of tests. This person may indulge in things, that person may not, and God takes account of all of those things. So it's not the case that the person's condemned by the conditions that God created in the first place. That would be unjust. It's not like that. So each person goes through those stages.
if God is able to create anything, like you mentioned in terms of the creation of humanity, how God was created reproduction and created our ability to differentiate colours, why is God unable to create a test where no suffering has to be gone through? Why is he unable to? Why is there no solution for a system when nobody has to suffer?
I don't know the answer to your question. What I can say is that in Islam we are told this is what God did, and in Islam there's a big focus on asking questions, thinking, reasoning, but there's also certain points at which we are told there are no answers. So could God have conceivably created a world without suffering? Yes. Did God do that? No. Why didn't God do that? I don't have an answer for that. So in the Quran, it teaches us that, look, you use your reason, you use your mind to arrive at truth, but then why God did certain things we are not given the answers for. So when I'm asked, like for example, you've asked this question, but someone can ask, as Muslims, it's encouraged for you as a Muslim you're supposed to pray 5 times a day, right? So that's the obligation, right? Why not 6? Why not 4? Why not 3? Yeah. So the thing is, in Islam, when we are talking to people about Islam, we can explain to them why we believe in God. We can explain to them why we believe in the Quran. And then we tell people why Islam is true. But then why these things exist, we'll simply say, God knows, we don't know.
Do you mind if I say something?
Sure.
Suffering thing. Have you ever been to the gym?
No.
Have you ever studied?
Yes.
Right, so when you studied for an exam, did you suffer?
Yes.
It was the same argument as the lockdown.
If you want to better yourself,
Sure.
It's a bit more technical. What about Shia versus Shiites and all the different branches and interpretations of Islam?
Yeah.
How does that fit in together from your perspective?
Sure. So the thing is, there's a difference between Islam and Christianity, that Christianity has many different schisms and
Many of them political.
and it started off quite early. With Islam, what you'll find is the vast majority of the Muslims are Sunni. And then the Shia are a small percentage. And in the history of Islam, they initially split from Sunniism due to a political reason. And then later on, they developed their own theology, which was different. So the good thing about the history of Islam is you will see that Sunniism is the orthodoxy that goes back, and there's no break in between the death. There's no break in between the death of the Prophet and the Muslims today. So Shiaism is an offshoot. So I'm a Sunni, but if a Shia was to say I'm right or I'm right, we wouldn't just draw our swords. I will give evidence. I will say this is why we represent pretty much the whole Muslim population.
Because that falls in line with if you're giving someone something, that's how God will judge you.
Sorry, say that again?
That falls in line with if you're giving something, that's how
God will judge you, yeah, definitely. So the thing is, you can't just religions. Islam is not something you can understand straight away. No, sorry, you can understand it straight away, but to understand some of the deep questions that you guys are asking. So the Quran, it actually goes over these things in quite some detail. It goes over suffering. That's a key thing. It goes over God consciousness, love, hope, fear, trust, all these things. And one of the things that I did, you're a teenager still, right? You're like 18? 18, yeah. One of the things that I did when I was a teenager is I was brought up in a household, and religion was something that was practiced, but it wasn't like I fully understood everything. So I got a copy of the Quran when I was a teenager, and I started to just read it and think about it. So that's the same thing I'd recommend that you do, and I'll give you this as a gift.
That's yours.
No, we've got loads of them over there. It's free.
Not in Arabic anyway.
No, it's all in English. And it's very easy to read. And we've got a whole bunch of them there. This isn't mine. I give these away. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So Ray, right? Your name. It'll give you a different perspective on life. Because the thing is, you're 18 now, and I guarantee you, you'll be 60 before you know it. Every person that you meet here that's older, like that gentleman, I shouldn't point, you get my point. If you ask them, do you remember what it was like when you were 15? They'll say, I remember it like it was yesterday. You know? So it's better for you to find the purpose of life in your young age than when you're old and senile and you're...
What does happen to people? Sorry, I mean, only God knows. Of course, but what does happen to people who do fail the test? You know, who are, I mean, most of the Muslim people I've spoken to, they've said to me that they disagree with homosexuality, that it's for God to judge, not them. But what about stuff like, you know, suicide? Is that failing the test? Is that like a straight pass into hell?
Islam teaches suicide is forbidden. Now, as Muslims, we know that in our religion that this is forbidden and this is a path to destruction and hellfire. However, if somebody has never heard of Islam and they were gone through an emotional breakdown, mental breakdown, they kill themselves, again, that's up to God. You're only accountable in Islam, Ray, for what you know. So, a Native American living out in some random place, never heard of Islam, lives, dies, he's not accountable for that. People are only accountable for what they know.
What I'm getting from you is so some of my family is very religious in Christianity, and actually that's part of what pushed me away from religion in the first place.
Your family's religious and that turned you away.
But what I'm getting from you is that Islam is more of a forgiving religion that I've seen in the past. So, you know, when speaking to Christians, one of the epicenters of Christianity is about forgiveness in faith. If you have faith, you are forgiven. And, you know, I was told Islam is not quite the same. But getting from you, God is actually more forgiving.
Yeah,
Based
I mean,
on God will judge you and everything that you're given.
yeah.
And therefore, you know, there's a bit more, I mean, not leeway, but, you know,
There is. And that's a common misconception about Islam. The common misconception about Islam is that it's a very it's a very.
Guy saying he saw me in court. I don't know where that is, bro. I don't know who this guy is, bro.
Let him run this, man.
Dude, who is this guy, bro? Why is he fucking
pick up and leave.
Huh?
You guys mad, bro?
It's all right.
You are nuts, mate.
Yeah.
You all got
Many people say he is crazy.
mad.
He wasn't crazy. People saw him. And you're lying. Why are you lying?
It's a good time that I can, if we walk away, because this is.
Rubbish! Jesus is rubbish!
Let's move away to somewhere. That was really crazy.
I tried to talk to them earlier.
Huh?
I tried to ask them about the religion. They didn't even want to question.
No, they don't.
There's nothing there.
No. Isa. Assalamu alaikum. How you doing? You alright? You good? Come with me. Come back, let's talk here. Oh. Okay, that's fine. So we could finish off the conversation. What's it called? Your last thing, what was it? Yeah, about forgiveness. So there's that misconception that Islam